So the next mantra we have to take up in Purusha Sukta is Dhata Purastadyamuda Jahara Shakrah Pravidvan Pradeshascha Tasra Tamevam Vidvan Amrita Iha Bhavati Nanya Pantha Ayanaya Vidyate. So we'll see the meaning of this mantra. It's one of the most beautiful mantras, which gives you an idea of the concept of the creation of the universe. Dhata. So here they use the word dhata. Dhata means the creator. So this dhata, we can also use the term for the time being, the Chaturmukha Brahma, that is the creator. So what he did was Purastat. Purastat means for the first time. It also means before. So then we have to ask, what do you mean by first time? What do you mean by before? Yam. Here yam means that the information about that true nature. Yam here means that information about true nature, also known as Vastu Vishaya. The Vastu Vishaya means Vastu. What is Vastu? Vastu is that which will never change. It is a reality. So it will never lose its characteristic, is Vastu. For example, there can be no liquid without the flow. There can be, viscosity may change, but it has to flow. Then there can be no solid without the mass. So like that you can also see in science also, there are very, very distinct characteristics of the Vastu, which will never change. So the Vastu of the universe, what is the reality behind this universe, which is constantly changing, and that Dhata, the creator, Purastat, for the first time or before, Yam Udajahara, whatever he explained. And then, how did he explain? How can somebody explain something? Only when he is Pravidvan. That means only when he has learned very well. Otherwise, how can you sit in the Vyasaputa and teach unless you have thoroughly processed what you have learned? Because as a student, it is possible, it is good to have, or it is alert that to have doubts and, not very clear understanding. All that is okay for a student, not for a teacher. A teacher must be very precise and he must have very thorough knowledge. He must have knowledge of cross-discipline also, because somebody will come and, when we are talking about creation and this cosmology, somebody will come and talk about science. They will talk about Big Bang Theory. They will talk about the particle. Then you should be prepared to talk about it. And such a knowledge is called Pravidvan. So this Dhata, the Chaturmukha Brahma, was Pravidvan. And he became Pravidvan. Why? How did he become Pravidvan? Because he learnt the Vastu Vishaya. And now the question is, for the first time, what do you mean by for the first time? First time means at the very beginning of the time. That at the very beginning of the time, this Dhata is the first teacher and he must find a first disciple. So who is the first disciple and who is this Dhata? And why did the sage of the Purusha Sukta use the word Dhata? Whereas our Purana talks about Chaturmukha Brahma as a son of Narayana and so on and so forth, but the Purusha Sukta does not use those words, it uses the word Dhata. So let us for a minute use the word Chaturmukha Brahma, because he has got 4 faces and these 4 faces represent the 4 Vedas, and he is also called as the Veda Purusha, and the whole of the Purusha Sukta we are talking about Veda Purushatvam, that is the characteristic of a Purusha, and he taught about reality of the Vastu Vishaya. Vastu means that which is unchanging, which is eternal. But the unchanging eternal also has to be given a name, because if you don't give a name, How can you identify? So nomenclature is important, and the nama that was given is Purusha. So this Purusha is the first principle. This first principle, Dhata Udajahara, he explained. And how did he explain? Because he is Pravidvan Prakarshena Viditavan. That's the Vigrahavakya for Pravidvan. Vigrahavakya means it is a tool to break a word. So who is the first disciple? Shakraha. Shakraha means Indra is the first disciple. So what did Indra do with that knowledge? He Chatasraha Pradeshaha, in all the four directions, and of course intermediate directions also, Udajahara propagated. So you can see the process. First principle, first teacher, Dhata, first student, Shakraha, and then who were there in the Disha Pradesha? If Indra is the first disciple, Dhata is the first teacher, and if nobody else existed, to whom did Indra teach? Now we have got to understand that in the process of the teaching of Dhata to Shakra, at that point of time, the creation also was happening. Just because we are sleeping, does it mean to say that nothing happens in the world? If we don't see, it doesn't mean that things don't go on in the world. So while we are sleeping also, everything happens. So while the teaching also is going on, creation is also happening simultaneously. But Dhata, the creator, is sitting here. So if he is only learning and he is not creating, what does it mean? And therefore we have to presume that this Dhata is not the one who is subject to limitations like us. That is, we can be in only one place in a given time, and we can only do one thing in a given moment, but Dhata is true multitasker. And this Dhata, this creation was happening, and in the meanwhile, Devataha, Rishayaha, Sadhyaha were already there. Because we have seen this mantra earlier. Sadhya Rishayaschaye. And Yajna was already created. Tasmaad Yajnat Sarvahutaha. So in the earlier itself, the scripture has talked about the existence of Devatas, Sadhyas and Rishis. So what he did, Shakra did, was to teach all the Devatas, Sadhyas and Rishis. So what do we learn from this? What we learn is that until this very moment, the tradition has maintained the Guru Shishya Parampara. All the learning has gone through in Guru Shishya Parampara only, and therefore if I want to become a Pravidwan, then I cannot help having a teacher. And without the help of a teacher, there is no way I can become a Pravidwan. So that is the message of this mantra, in addition to other things. So the Suktas also says, so the Pravidwan, not only Guru Shishya Parampara has to be maintained. For one to become Pravidwan, Evam. Purusha Sukta says, this is how it must be done. How? The teacher must become a Pravidwan first. Dhata Pravidwan. Then he must make a student Pravidwan. Shakraha Pravidwan. And the Pravidwan Shakra will go and make the Devatas, Sadhyas, Rishayas Pravidwans. Evam. So in this way, the teacher-student transmission to create Pravidwans should take place. And therefore the teacher must have immense amount of seriousness in learning and teaching, and an equal amount of seriousness must be there in the student also. Then only this Guru Parampara chain will continue. Anywhere the link is lost, then what happens? We start introducing ajnana, ignorance, and then we start introducing distortion of information, and which has happened because somewhere down the line this dedicated Guru Shishya Parampara was not observed by generation after generation. Why do they do that? Because of the driving force of Arthakama and the total negation of Dharma and Moksha. And then, so because we don't see the outcome of this Guru Shishya Parampara Pravidwan trend, isn't it? Because what is the outcome? Iha amrutaha bhavanti. If one follows this rule, in this birth itself, a person gets liberated. So the question is, do I feel liberated? I don't feel liberated. So where is the problem? The problem is either the dhata my teacher is not a pravidwan, nor have I become a pravidwan, or I don't have shraddha in this learning, and therefore I feel limited. So that is why the key word here is evam. Dhata purastadyamuda jahara shakrah pravidvan pradishaschatasraha tam evam. Keyword. This way, if it happens, iha amrutaha bhavanti, a person becomes here immortal. Then we can say, is that the only way? Is there no other shortcut? Is there no other easy way? Ayanaya, for the sake of liberation. Anyaha pantha na vidyate. There is no other way. So here are the highlights. Number one, Guru Shishya Parampara started at the very beginning of creation. And therefore we have to again raise this next question. Who was the teacher for Dhata? He must also have had a guru, right? For that we have to go to Bhagavata for help, how it happened. Because Puranas are called the commentaries on the Veda mantras. So that is why it's very essential we study Puranas. So even I was skeptical in my early days about Puranas, but as I am studying more and more Puranas and teaching, now I am getting more and more respect for the study of Puranas, because without Puranas help, we cannot understand Veda. And since my project is to try to understand Veda as much as possible, Purana is indispensable. So Guru Shishya Parampara is the first point. The second important point is Shishya's readiness and competence and commitment. And the third one is we also have precedents of ancients, starting from Indra, and then Rishayaha. Again, Purana gives us the help. Bhrigu, Marichi, Vasishtha, Narada, Valmiki, Parashara, Vyasa, Shaunaka, Yajnavalkya. What hoary names. All of them have gone through this rigor. Every one of them. And they become our role models. If Vedavyasa can sit with his teacher and learn, what should I do? So this is what the mantra opens our eyes to. Then the fourth important point is, because of their commitment, they all got grace of God. This also you will see. So to whom Bhagavad Anugraha takes place? Lot of people say, I want to get the grace of God, and then you do worship, you do puja, you do yajna and all that. But when you give up this process, Ishvara's Anugraha will not be available. Because what is the nature of Ishvara? Ishvara's nature is Jnana Swarupa. So if we reject the Swarupa of Ishvara, how can we get grace? And therefore, if we want to get Ishvara Anugraha, this mantra is asserting that evam. This is how it should happen. So then, what do you do with this information? How do you process this information? What did they do? Dhata became Pravidwan? How did he become Pravidwan? Because of Upasana. Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasa. Shravana, listening, Manana, contemplate, repetition, and Nididhyasa, practice. And how did Indra get all this knowledge? Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasa. How did all the rishis get this information? Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasa. Evam, and therefore, not enough to know the nature of the Virat Purusha, but you also meditate. So, Upasana on the Virat Purusha has to take place. Point number 5. Point number 6 is anyone who follows this methodology will get Ishvara's grace. Ishvara's grace is Jnana Sampadana. Anyone who follows this methodology will get moksha here. That is also a promise of this mantra. Then, what is the knowledge we have got? Pravidwan. How did I become Pravidwan? What was the Pravidwan nature of Dhata and Chakra, Marichi and others? It is, I am the Virat Purusha. The Jivatma, Paramatma, Antargata, inside what is inhabiting the Jivatma, Paramatma, that Brahman is I am. And I am free now only when you feel completely free from the Bhranti or confusion of Dehatma Bhava, body being recognized as Atman. Until that Bhranti goes away, until such time, the Upasana should continue. It will not go easily. That is why one has to work on to be Pravidwan. So what is Upasana? Upasana is only a means. It is not the end. Lot of people say meditation. Meditation is a critical component of spiritual journey, but it is only a means. Because Upanishad also says, by pravachana, by bahushrutatva, or by scholarship, or by work, na karmana, or by means of successive projects we undertake, na prajaya, not by wealth, na dhanena, not by tirtha yatra, not by vrata, not by yajna, not all of these things are only a means and not the end. And what they do, they actually give Chitta Shuddhi, and then they will actually make us ready for Brahmajnana. So, therefore, you see there is an interesting word used, Purastat. Purastat means before what? Before what means before creation. How can anyone who is created, that is after creation, know what was before creation? How can you have first-hand knowledge about creation if you are a subset of creation? Therefore, the mantra has to resolve that question. And so it did not use any name. The mantra used the word Dhata. So what does it mean? What is Dhata's Vigraha Vakya? What is the, how do we break this word Dhata? Srishtim dadati karoti iti Dhata. Also he is called as Vidhata. That is one who is a creator, the being. That means the first assumption of nama takes place. So this first assumption of nomenclature is this Dhata, and the nama called Dhata, because now we are trying to give the form to that, but it has only a name, no Rupa. So this Dhata who has only nama, what is it? It is called as Jnanam. Jnanam is the nomenclature for the knowledge, but knowledge cannot be given a form. It's an experience. And therefore, the mantra calls it as Dhata. It's a nomenclature of jnana. So from where did this jnana come? That is where the Purana will help us, because the Paramapurusha, who is the Jnana Swarupa, total Jnana Swarupa, is called as Narayana. That's why he is also known as Jnana Ghana, Vijnana Ghana. So you will come across those terms also in many prayers also. In Stotra Sahitya also you will get that. So this Purana gives us points to a chronology. So what is the chronology? From Narayana, from the navel comes out a lotus. So coming out of a lotus means what? Jnana becomes particularized for teaching's sake. The vast ocean of knowledge has got to be customized for the student. So what does the teacher do? A pravidwan, what does he do? He will actually collect the most important information and channelize it through this reed called the lotus stalk. Thus Narayana does it. And what does Narayana do? And he creates this being, dhata. After creating this being has no jnana. Because there is no jnana, there is fear. And therefore the Purana says to Bhagavanta, Hey Bhagavanta, pahi pahi prapannam mam. There is a beautiful stotra there in the Bhagavata. And then he will actually surrender and then say, please help, please help. And what is the solution that the Pravidwan gives to his student? Very different from what a psychological counselor does for a person when he goes for psychiatric advice, psychological advice. Here, what the dhata instruction that he gets is, you go meditate, tapa. He uses 2 times, he says, tapa. Why 2 times? There is a rule called adare dviruktihi. You have to repeat it for the sake of emphasis of the importance. So he says this, Satapas Taptva, Taittiriya Upanishad. So he actually meditates and Brahma takes up the penance and gets the grace of Parameshwara. So what is the grace of Parameshwara? It is Parameshwara, the etymology of the word Parameshwara is Para, Utkrishta, Ma means Shakti. So Parama means Utkrishta Shakti. Utkrishta, the most powerful Shakti is Jnana, Parashakti, Yasya Asau Paramaha. And he is the Lord of that Ishte Asau Viti Ishvaraha. And therefore, Paramascha Asau Ishvaraha Parameshwaraha. So when you use the word Parameshwara means what? One who has got this extraordinary power and is the Lord of this extraordinary power, and that is the power of knowledge. And that is what he has got. We can also use the word Ma, as we have many times said, as the Prakriti, that means that which can be measured. And Parama is immeasurable, beyond measurement. Ma ke pare hai. So it's beyond measurement. And this Chaturmukha Brahma obtained the necessary qualification, and that qualification is Ishvaranugraha. So what is the meaning of Ishvaranugraha? What do you mean by Ishvara's grace? What do you mean by blessing? Because of my upasana, I have got blessing of Ishvara. In the context of the Purusha Sukta, is where you have got the jnana of Bhagavan, experience of the jnana called Vijnana, then knowledge called Vidya, absorption into this knowledge called Samadhi, and the luster coming out of it called Tejas, and the strength coming out of it called Bala, and the ability to use it with valor called Virya. That is Ishvara's grace. Jnana, Vijnana, Vidya, Samadhi, Tejas, Ojas, Bala, Viryani, Ishvaranugraha. That's the definition. And Dhata Purvam Yatha Akalpayat. So what did he do in all his meditation? In his meditation, this Dhata found out that in the past iteration of the creation, the way in which the creation had taken place, he repeats it. And thus he becomes the Prakarsha Vidwan. And that knowledge is spread in all the four directions without holding back anything for anybody. Whoever comes with Shraddha Bhakti will get that knowledge. And this parampara was instituted. In this the process, this is how you actually measure that you have got this grace of Ishvara. And this is the methodology that cannot be violated if you want to be liberated from ignorance. That is the essence of this most beautiful mantra. Dhata purastadyamuda jahara shakrah pravidvan pradishaschatasraha tamevam vidvan amruta iha bhavati nanyah pantha ayanaya vidyate.